Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm excited to have you here today as we explore a fascinating topic, the kindness paradox. In this presentation, we'll look at why kindness doesn't always lead to the respect we might expect. We'll dive into some interesting psychological insights and challenge common assumptions. So, let's get started and uncover what lies behind this paradox. Let's talk about something that might seem counterintuitive: the hidden cost of certain, kind behaviors. Research from Harvard's Department of Social Psychology shows that some acts of kindness can actually reduce how competent you appear by as much as 57%. That's a surprising and eye-opening statistic. What it tells us is that not all kindness is harmless. Some behaviors can be psychological traps. They subtly position you lower in social hierarchies without you even realizing it. So, in this part of the presentation, we're going to look at 5 specific acts of kindness that might be making people disrespect you, explore why they tend to backfire, and discuss better alternatives that command respect instead. This ties into the overall theme of understanding how to navigate social dynamics more effectively and intentionally. Let's talk about over-apologizing for normal requests. We've all been there, saying things like "sorry to bother you" or "sorry, but could you?" It might seem polite and considerate on the surface, but research shows it actually has the opposite effect. At Yale, researchers found that when people start a request with an apology, they're 43% less likely to get their needs met promptly. Plus, they tend to be interrupted nearly 3 times more often in subsequent conversations. Why does this happen? Well, apologies tend to frame your needs as burdens or inconveniences. Instead of showing respect or politeness, you're inadvertently training others to see your requests as interruptions that don't deserve priority. A better approach: state your needs clearly but politely. For example, you might say, "I'd like your input on this when you have a moment." It's about being direct and respectful without framing your request as a burden. This shift is crucial because it helps you communicate your needs effectively without undermining your authority or the importance of what you're asking for. Remember, clear and polite communication is often more impactful than over-apologizing. Helping without being asked might seem like a kind gesture, but it's not always received that way. In fact, unsolicited assistance can sometimes come across as condescending rather than helpful. Research from Princeton shows that when we offer help without being asked, it's often seen as a status move. Essentially, it can imply that the other person is incapable or needs saving, which isn't the message we want to send. I've seen this firsthand in the workplace. There was a team member who kept jumping in to help colleagues, thinking they were being supportive. But instead of gratitude, coworkers described this behavior as micromanaging and condescending during exit interviews. It's a good reminder that our intention to help isn't always what the other person perceives. A better approach is to offer support in a respectful way, without imposing. For example, you might say, "Hey, I noticed you're working on X, would you like any help with that?" This way, you give the other person the choice, respecting their autonomy while still showing you're willing to support if needed. Remember, the key is to offer help without making it about your own status or judgment. It's about being considerate and supportive in a way that truly empowers others. Let's talk about accepting poor treatment to keep the peace. Sometimes, conflict avoidance might seem like a sign of maturity, but in reality, it can actually signal weakness. According to research from Columbia University, 78% of people interpret this kind of avoidance as a lack of backbone, not kindness. I recall observing a professional who allowed colleagues to interrupt her presentations repeatedly. Over time, her ideas were ignored, and her contributions were credited to others. By simply trying to keep the peace, she unintentionally sent the message that her voice didn't matter. So, what's a better approach? Respectfully addressing issues, but doing so firmly. For example, saying something like, "I'd like to finish my point before moving on," sets boundaries without creating conflict. This ties back to our overall theme of healthy communication, standing up for yourself while maintaining respect. It's about ensuring your voice is heard and valued, rather than sacrificing your integrity just to avoid conflict. Now, let's talk about excessive availability. Being available 24/7 might seem like dedication, but it actually can harm how others perceive your value. Research from Stanford psychologists shows that people who are constantly available are seen as 62% less important and 47% less competent compared to those who set healthy boundaries. I once coached a manager who took pride in answering messages at all hours. Instead of earning admiration, his team started sending non-urgent requests late at night, and they even grew annoyed when he didn't respond right away. This illustrates a key point. Excessive availability sends a signal that your time has no true value. And based on the scarcity principle, when something is always available, it becomes undervalued. So, a simple but powerful alternative is to protect your time. For example, I recommend letting your team know, I'm available between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. I'll respond tomorrow morning. Remember, setting boundaries not only preserves your energy, but also enhances how others see your importance and competence. Let's talk about downplaying your achievements. You've probably said things like, it was nothing, or I just got lucky, thinking you're being modest. But what you see as humility, psychology often interprets as insecurity. There was an NYU study that found a striking 83% of listeners see self-deprecating comments as a sign of low confidence, not genuine modesty. So, when we shy away from recognizing our success, it can actually send the wrong message. I want to share a quick story about a talented colleague of mine. She consistently minimized her role in successful projects. During her performance reviews, her manager kept concluding she lacked leadership readiness, despite her strong results. Her kindness and humility, in this case, ended up undermining her advancement. So instead of downplaying, consider accepting recognition gracefully. A simple, thank you, I worked hard on that, can show confidence and professionalism. Remember, acknowledging your accomplishments appropriately is key to advancing in your career and reinforcing your value. So let's talk about why kindness can sometimes backfire and how respect really works in our interactions. The core issue here is perceived value alignment. Essentially, people unconsciously treat others based on how those individuals signal their own worth. If you send mixed signals about your value, it can lead to misunderstandings. One common pitfall is over-apologizing. When you apologize excessively, it can make you seem like your needs are burdensome to others, which can diminish their respect for you. It's important to recognize when apologies are genuine and necessary, but not to overuse them. Another point is excessive availability. If you're always there, always accessible, it can unintentionally suggest that your time isn't valuable. People might start taking your availability for granted, which can undermine respect. Then there's downplaying achievements. When you tend to minimize your successes, it can imply that your accomplishments lack real value. Confidence and acknowledging your strengths are key to signaling your worth effectively. Research from Columbia confirms that people instinctively gauge respect based on how much they perceive you respect yourself. So, how you carry yourself, how you value your own worth, directly influences how others treat you. Understanding this helps us see that building genuine respect starts from within. The Stoic solution, benevolent strength. The key idea here is that kindness isn't something to be abandoned or diminished. Instead, it's about reframing kindness from a position of strength. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, for example, emphasized maintaining an untroubled spirit and facing reality head-on, knowing things for what they truly are. Modern research supports this wisdom. A study from Berkeley found that people who balance warmth with boundaries are perceived as better leaders, rating 89% higher in leadership potential and earning 34% more respect. This concept of benevolent strength is about kindness that doesn't compromise your dignity or authority. Now, how do we put this into action? The strategy involves incremental boundary setting, small, consistent steps that change how others see us. First, identify your biggest habit. Maybe you apologize too much or stay too available. Next, replace that habit with a respectful alternative. For example, instead of saying, sorry to bother you, try, "I'd like your input when you're free." Or instead of "It was nothing," say, "Thank you, I appreciate you noticing." Finally, expect some discomfort. Change can feel awkward at first because others are used to the old patterns. But remember, the resistance will fade, and what remains is genuine respect. And here we are at the final insight: balanced kindness. What does that really mean? Well, true kindness isn't about erasing yourself or always putting others first to the point where you lose your identity. It's about creating a healthy space for others while still honoring your own needs and boundaries. You want to be polite, of course, but that doesn't mean you should apologize just for existing. Similarly, being helpful is great, but you shouldn't assume control or take over situations. It's about offering support without overstepping. And yes, you should be available to others, but not at the expense of your own time and well-being. Being modest is important, but that doesn't mean you should deny your worth or diminish your contributions. The key message here is that respect and kindness are not opposites, they're partners. When you keep these 5 behaviors in check, you don't become less kind. Instead, you become both kind and respected. Remember, genuine respect isn't about self-sacrifice or constantly giving more than you have. It's about maintaining a balanced kindness that comes from a healthy sense of self-respect. That's what truly earns respect and creates meaningful connections.